Batman is one of the most iconic characters in comic book history. Let me reframe that. There are only three characters from comics as popular as Batman: Superman, Wonder Woman, and Spider-Man. Through adaptations, reiterations, Elseworlds, spin-offs, tie-ins, and crossovers, Batman is wildly iconic and thoroughly well known. Through brand saturation, Batman and his related characters have dominated the market. In the New 52 imprint from 2011 to 2016, not counting convergence titles, of the 153 titles published, 52 featured either Batman or a Batman side character as the main character. They could have made a New 52 with only Batman-related books. Compare that with 26 Superman titles, 20 Green Lantern titles, 18 Wonder Woman titles, and 11 Flash titles. It's pretty clear there is a difference in what the Bat logo can do over other symbols. And there's a lot of possible reasons for this, like the popularity of edgy, gritty characters among adolescents, and the success of recent adaptations of Batman. But I think one reason for Batman's popularity is undeniably his rogues gallery. Don't get me wrong, I love good stories featuring Lex Luthor and Barbara Minerva, but neither Superman nor Wonder Woman has a rogue gallery with the depth that Batman's possesses. Joker, Two-Face, Mr. Freeze, Catwoman, Penguin, Poison Ivy, Riddler, Scarecrow, Man-Bat, Harley Quinn, Bane, Ra's al Ghul, Talia. These characters, love them or hate them, are iconic. Even the weaker villains have cult followings. You think the Blue Snowman has a Lego minifigure? No. You know how many minifigures Killer Moth has? 3. And to the credit of their creators, these characters have style. Color balance, unique ideas, classy outfits, and straightforward personalities to help make these villains stand out of the crowd. Plus, as a detective character, Batman is all about the villains. Superman's best stories can be told without villains, as he's about hope. Wonder Woman's best stories can be told without costumed recurring enemies, because she's about truth. But Batman? He's about justice. And if you're about justice, you need an injustice to prevent or avenge. As such, Batman's stories revolve around his villains. In the earliest appearances, Batman's villains were criminals with gimmicks or just regular mobster types. Characters might have motivation, like Two-Face being angry at his scarring and deciding to leave things up to chance, or Scarecrow may like scaring people, but he ultimately does it for money. Even the Joker is a serial killer motivated by sadism. This changed a little in the Silver Age. Characters stopped showing up if they were too violent, or started pulling pranks if they weren't. With the Bronze Age, one of the biggest changes to comics arrived, not as a character, not as an event, but as a building. Arkham Asylum, or Arkham Hospital, or Arkham Sanitarium, as it was occasionally called in early appearances, was established in 1974 as a place for the mentally ill and disordered in Gotham. Over time, Batman's adversaries slowly landed in the asylum instead of a prison. Any possibility for healing is in direct conflict with the need for Batman's extremely popular villains to appear over and over again. So Arkham Asylum is never a successful institution, even in its earliest days. However, it is at least portrayed as a hospital for a while. That is, until it starts to get darker. Through the works of several artists, both writers and illustrators, Arkham Asylum became a house of torture and horror. The asylum is retconned by Len Wein to be founded by Amadeus Arkham, a psychiatrist that trusted one of his patients that ended up murdering his wife and daughter. Arkham murdered the patient, and the asylum was never a house of healing after. Grant Morrison's popular psychological thriller, Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on Serious Earth, helped cement the asylum as a house of horror, and Alan Grant's The Last Arkham makes it clear that abuse is regularly used at Arkham Asylum. Continued portrayals depict violent guards and illegal practices, and the asylum is generally seen to be far worse than an average prison, and Gotham's courts keep using it. With the asylum functioning as the main depository for villainous characters that will obviously return, Batman writers needed the villains to be mentally divergent, so as to allow Arkham to be seen as the natural destination. This has led to some decently disgusting portrayals. Andrew Helfer retconned Harvey Dent into an abuse victim with bipolar disorder, before becoming Two-Face. Bipolar disorder affects moods, but doesn't make a good person suddenly a mass murderer without a conscience. Bruce Jones retconned Jonathan Crane into an abuse victim suffering from a debilitating phobia, seeking revenge on his bullies and then the world as Scarecrow. Generally, phobias are directed inward, not a source for homicidal rage. Victor Freeze is admittedly much more interesting in Paul Dini's retcon, as a sad Mr. Freeze motivated by love. Still, depression is far from a motive to commit murder. Chuck Dixon retconned Edward Nygma from a man interested in testing his wits to an abuse victim that developed an obsessive compulsion to prove he was smarter than everyone, manifesting itself later as the Riddler. OCD can be difficult to deal with, but it isn't a path to killing sprees. And if you think the changes to Batman's lineup to include neurodivergency is positive, you haven't been paying attention. These characters are shown as murderers as a result of their disorders, when they would much more likely be victims, as in real life the evil often prey on those they deem less human. This isn't even every villain that's been given a mental disorder or disability, and these characters, by nature of the medium, cannot receive help. They are regularly tortured, abused, brutalized, and demonized, and the audience eats it up. With the exception of Penguin, Bane, and maybe Poison Ivy, there isn't a major villain on Batman's roster that can't be described as mentally ill. The difference between the real world and Gotham is that people who permit the abuse of the mentally different aren't considered heroes. Or at least we hope. The truth is, general audiences still enjoy the stories where Batman is in peril in Arkham Asylum. Not due to the illegal practices, but rather due to the people inside getting loose. Rocksteady Studios' BAFTA award-winning game Batman Arkham Asylum revolves around the Caped Crusader helping reclaim the asylum from its inmates, and putting it back in the hands of the brutalist guards and doctors. In the course of the game's story, Joker releases a group of patients referred to with the outdated term lunatics. These individuals are not diagnosed beyond general terms, but they seem to have no control over their bodies or ability to communicate. They charge at Batman, and the player is rewarded points for lifting them into the air, slamming their bodies on the ground, and punching them into unconsciousness, with their skulls slamming against various hard surfaces. This game mechanic frames violent treatment of the mentally disordered as a dispensation of justice. Batman, the master martial artist, who should know more ways to safely defend himself than to attack others, uses what is in the real world deadly force against escaped psychiatric patients. Most adaptations and iterations of Batman are a bit more subtle, but they all focus on violence being an acceptable way to deal with people like me and people like several individuals that I care about. I'm not saying that mass murderers are somehow worth defending, mind you. There is not a way I'm going to say that Joker deserves respectful treatment. The problem is, these characters are committing crimes that they would be both less likely to commit, but also more likely to be the victims of. Yet these characters are treated as the masterminds, the manipulators, and the menaces. They function as a sign for abusers to look out for their victims. The neurodivergent might be lurking, scheming against you, tricking you into treating them with basic humanity. It tells them don't, and it lays its sympathy with the man that crushes the skulls of the sick. Any sympathy for those with mental disorders in the Batman universe leads to death or injury. There is no long-term redemption, no positive treatment, and no humanity. I don't know how these stories could be told without the problems, outside of reverting the characters to their original motivations. Batman Little Gotham does a good job of humanizing the characters with humor, and good individual stories have been told about Mr. Freeze and Two-Face. But still, as it stands, works like Arkham Asylum and other very popular ones propose an unhealthy perspective, and these depictions should be taken with a grain of salt.